Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks everyone for showing up. I really appreciate your attention. The plan is I'm going to talk for a bit, and then at some point Jeremy's going to interrupt us because he's got a whole bunch of liberating structures which are designed to get us interacting and not just listening to the monologue. I mean, I'm going to try and do the best monologue of my life, but um, even the best monologue of my life is not anywhere near as intelligent as the network capacity of the brains in this room. So we will split out and talk to each other using some format that Jeremy will respond on the spot with. We just organized this about 3 seconds ago. Um, and yeah, for context, it's 10:30 p.m. where I am, and that's usually my bedtime. So I'm giving myself forgiveness and grace for being a bit sluggish, a bit gentle, but maybe that'll be good. So Microsolidarity is like the culmination of the last 12 years of my work. And that's why I could talk for a long time and not even begin to get into the details. So I'm trying to slice off a useful piece just to start the conversation with some shared context. And I've been joining some of the sessions today, the last couple of hours, and it's been helping me to tune in with like who's here, who's in the room, what are we trying to do, like what's the shared project of the people that are showing up at Rebuild, and what's my piece of the pie. So my guess from having just met a few people in little breakout rooms and from reading some of the session titles and from participating a little bit is that it seems like there's quite a lot of people here that would basically like to be living in a village, whether that's like literally physically in a village with like lots of little clusters of houses and dogs and kids and veggie gardens and stuff, or a slightly more 21st century digital virtual Web3 village where maybe you are a nomad and you're moving to lots of different places, but you still have that sense of being really densely connected to a social fabric, to having a sense of emotional closeness with people where you can be authentic and be received and supported, to have like shared economics. So it's not all about you as an individual working your ass off in capitalism and like trying to pay the bills, but you're actually getting to benefit from some expanding commons. And do you recognize yourself in any of the story I'm telling? Is that kind of who we are here? So thanks, Rodrigo's thumb. I appreciate that a lot. So in my experience, that vision is really sweet and really motivating, and really nice in theory, and in practice, it seldom turns out so sweetly as I just described. And I have worked with groups all over the world now that are trying to do something a bit like that. They're trying to build up these containers where we have emotional closeness and economic solidarity and a better way of living and a transformative next stage paradigm kind of thing. And a lot of them suck. A lot of them are really unpleasant. Uh, that's maybe I'm just judgmental and cynical or something, but I've seen a lot of like, I don't know, hidden hierarchies, weird toxic power dynamics, an inability to hold people to account because, well, they're popular and we can't really say anything about how they're also quite kind of creepy. A lot of the places I visited, there's quite a lot of freeloading. Like there's just a few people there that just don't do anything, and we don't really know how to deal with that. And it's just an uncomfortable truth. And okay, we just accept a certain percentage of the group is not really contributing because it's awkward to deal with. A lot of the groups I've been in have these like really interminable, endless meetings, which are they really grind down my will to live. Um, and that's just a sample, there's like lots of different ways that these kinds of very inspiring, very sweet, collaborative utopian visions can turn into something that's really not so delightful in practice. And in just cold, hard, sort of social Darwinist terms or economic terms, a lot of these collaborative, cooperative, community-driven projects don't compete in the in the marketplace of ideas and in financial terms, they don't compete with individualist, nuclear family, white picket fence life. And we've got to ask why that is. Why is it that why is it so easy to paint a dream of the future that we want to be, but actually so hard to embody it? And I think each of us maybe will have a different answer to that question of why it's not so straightforward. And the answer to the question I know a lot of people that kind of almost like shape their identity around the answer to that question. So some people will say, well, it's capitalism, that's the problem. And what we need is something, you need a Marxist analysis and you need there'll be some story about that. Other people will, they'll talk about entrenched systems of oppression and that really helps them understand why things are hard and how things need to change. We've each got a different story. And my one is that I think most of the people I know who are Westerners have been raised in a sequence of generations now, 5, 6, 7 generations, a long time, of increasing individualism. That we've gone through, ever since the Enlightenment, really, gone through this process from being a social species, a mammal, to becoming individuals. And it's like if you see that murmuration of starlings, this amazing swarm of birds all like, it would be absurd to look at that and say, oh, look at those individuals, right? Like the important thing about the murmuration is this like emergent property that happens as a group. And I think the same is true of any mammal species. Like we're only interesting as a group. We're not interesting as individuals. And we've been trained for so long to think of ourselves as individuals. And so when we come into this attempt to be in a more collaborative way of being, as being part of a whole, not the end of the story, what we lack are skills. So there's like specific stuff about, like I said, how do you hold someone to account? How do you have a difficult conversation with integrity and it not blow up into drama? How do you make decisions? How do you activate the collective intelligence of a group of 18 people? Like there's a bunch of just kind of concrete skills that are missing. And there's something deeper than skills, which is a way of being. And I don't know a better word for it than that, but I think even Jasper maybe mentioned that in your talk. I dropped into some of that, like that there's a way of being, there's a kind of character, there's an orientation, there's a posture, there's the things that you notice, the things that come to you to contribute. If we've been trained for individualism, then we're not particularly well equipped for mutualism, for collaboration, for community life. And this is the downer. This is the bum out part of the talk. I think we're gonna go positive. I haven't got a plan, but I think it gets more optimistic than that. So I guess the question for me is like, how do we cultivate the skills and the ways of being that are necessary to actually be the kind of people who can inhabit our vision? It's one thing to have the vision, but the other thing is like, how do I become the person that can inhabit it and keep it alive and thriving, instead of being the kind of person like most of us who show up in a collaborative context and don't know how to contribute well, make a bit of a mess of it, like are a little bit unaware of the negative influence that we're having, or like just don't kind of know how to handle the awkward interpersonal dynamics, or like, oh. And in Jeremy's talk, he mentioned the Cynefin framework, which is a way of thinking about what kind of context are we in? Okay, we're in a complex context. If you're in a complex context, the appropriate algorithm for like learning in that complexity is you probe, sense, and respond. So there's like a specific formula for how do you gain skills and intelligence and capacity when what you're up against is really complex and unpredictable and changing all the time and borderline chaotic. So Microsolidarity is this attempt to probe and sense and respond, and to enroll lots of people in probing and sensing and responding through this challenge of coming out of individualism into mutualism. And the method that makes sense to me is to start at a reasonably small scale and to practice with reasonably low stakes, where the cost of failure is not too high, that it's not prohibitive, that it doesn't like destroy your life savings, that it doesn't leave you with these like psychic injuries, which take years to recover from. But they're just like enough that if you get it right, you have that sense of satisfaction. And if you get it wrong, you can dust yourself off and try again tomorrow. So it makes sense to me to start at that level. And then gradually, as we prove, yeah, I can organize a book club. I can organize a book club. I can get 5 people together once a month and we can have a good time meeting each other. And I can do the basic fundamentals of just getting that muscle trained up. Okay, got that. What's my next ambition? It makes sense to me to start with these just small groups that are low stakes, get the muscles trained up, and then gradually to start accumulating these smaller groups into a larger network. So that's what we've been doing with the Microsolidarity network. It's I don't track the numbers, but there's a few dozen communities, I guess, now that are really active. The parent community, I guess, of Microsolidarity, like where this all came from, was my experience at Enspiral, and now Mihal's really excellent and energetic contributor at Enspiral, and the collective organism has some of his personality in it now, which is really sweet. My experience at Enspiral has been, it's about 200 people. We have shared spaces, like shared spaces for working in, but not for living in. We've got our, quite a lot of privacy and distance, but it's a virtual village rather than a physical village. And the mission at Enspiral is to support more people to work on stuff that matters. And there's an assumption there that a lot of people are working on stuff that doesn't matter. that when we look at what we confront as a species to deal with in this generation, there's a lot of really important things to be done and not enough energy going towards them. So that's the Enspiral mission, is get more people working on stuff that matters. And the method that we use to get there is a lot of mutual aid, a lot of peer support, a lot of, we've done many different experiments with like radical new approaches to finance and investing in each other's companies and so on. But the thing that has been stable and steady through the last 15 years of experimentation is, as Jasper said, social fabric, like building up very high trust relationships where I know I've got people who have my back. Like if Mihal's doing something ambitious and creative and is up against a really difficult problem, which is not just like, oh, how do I engineer my way out of this? But no, it's like, there's something about my personality which is blocking me from my objectives. He knows that he can come to me and I'll be able to support him in a meaningful way, and vice versa. And actually, he's really good at doing that for people who are showing up and saying like, hey, I'm really here. I'm really here to help. And it makes all the difference in the world. Like the reason that Enspiral exists 15 years later, where lots of other collaborative community projects have sputtered out, is because I think there's such a high degree of solidarity and care that's happening. And with that context of care around me, I'm much more ambitious. I'm much more creative. I'm much more courageous. I have much more access to collective intelligence than if it's just me hammering away at my own thing by myself, trying to get this vision to come into fruition. So Enspiral is a specific group of people in a specific place. And it's had such an amazing positive contribution to my life, but it's fundamentally limited in scale. Like it works because there's very high trust between the members, and you can't have very high trust with very large groups of people. It's a sort of a basic principle of social physics that the larger the group, the less trust you can have between the members on average. And so there's part of me that wants to bring everyone into Enspiral and say, oh, we've got this amazing thing going, you should all join. But I know that it doesn't really work with more than a couple of hundred people. And so I've been chewing on this problem for the last few years. Basically, how do we start many more Enspirals? How do we give people a social context where they feel they have what they need to work on stuff that matters, to grow up, to become the kind of people that are equipped for community life, that can be ambitious? Like, how do we create the social context that supports people to really thrive and to do stuff that is going to make a big positive contribution in the world? And it turned out that's quite a difficult challenge, like how to take what we've learned from one specific community in a specific place with a specific history and a specific set of people and abstract some patterns out of that that can be reproduced in different contexts. Yeah, there's a whole, I don't even know, it feels like someone should be doing a PhD on this question. I don't even know what the question is, or like what would be the name of the, what would be the name of the college that you go to learn how to do that thing. But I've been trying to abstract some patterns that people can replicate in different contexts. And the best guesses that I've got so far, which are being implemented in these, few dozen communities that I mentioned, there's one thing about scale and another thing about rhythm. So Stephen's just been dropping some links here, and there's one to the Dunbar's number. So let me talk about Dunbar's number. Some of you may have heard of this term. It's used in a sort of like popular informal way, and people roughly understand it as like, oh, Dunbar's number is like 100, 150 people-ish, and it's the number of people that you can kind of have a meaningful relationship with. And beyond that, our brains just kind of get overwhelmed. And I think one of the points that I would love it, like if all that Microsolidarity achieved was to get people to understand that Dunbar's number is a plural, this Dunbar's numbers, there are many numbers, it's not just the one, then I would be stoked if that's all I achieved. So Dunbar's numbers are 5, 15, 50, 150, 500, 1500, on and on. And at each of these, the way that I think about it now is if you take a group of these different sizes, and don't get hung up on the specifics, whether it's 5 or 6 or 15 or 14, it doesn't matter. But around about these thresholds, the superorganism that's formed by that collective of people becomes a different species. So there's, if you think about society as a ecological space, the superorganism of 5 people is a species that's adapted to do certain things. And the superorganism of 15 does different things, and the 150 does different things. They've got different strengths and different weaknesses, different affordances, different things that they can contribute, and they're good for different stuff. So that just sounds like a random piece of sociological trivia, but it really makes a big difference. So like people, for example, that don't have this understanding of what the different thresholds are good for, will go to a festival, say, with 500 people or 5,000 people, and they'll have this like transformative moment, like, oh, I found my tribe, my life's changed, I'm having this peak experience, I feel so accepted, I know everything's going to be different now. And then reasonably likely within a couple of months or even days of leaving that festival, there's this like brutal plummet of despair as I realized that, wow, I thought everything was going to be different, but I don't actually have the support that I need to implement it. Like I thought I'd found my tribe, but now that I'm having a bad day, no one showed up for me. Like, where is the follow through on all the good vibes that I had when we were like arm in arm around the fireplace? Like it's evaporated. And that to me, that like crushing heartbreak moment, which can be really painful. I'm kind of like semi joking, but it can be really, really brutally painful for people and really heartbreaking. The reason people break their hearts like that is because they're confused about what they can expect of what species of group. So if I go to a group of 5,000 people and feel like, wow, I really belong here, these are my people, like 5,000 people can't tell if you're there or not. They're not going to notice if you don't show up. Again, it's just basic social physics. But 5 people can notice, you know, like we've currently got what, 10 something people on the screen. If one of you drops off, I'm going to notice. And there might be a little part of me that goes, oh, what's up with you? Are you cool? Like, did I say something? I can track that, but a large group can't track that. And so like, that's just a simple example of where our lack of scale sensitivity can lead us into really challenging places. So that's part of what we're doing in Microsolidarity, is training people in scale sensitivity to understand like, hey, did you know a group of 5 people have the cognitive capacity to all simultaneously model all the other minds in the circle, and not just model each other's minds, but model the content of each other's minds. So they know, I know what you're thinking, and I know what you're thinking about what I'm thinking. And I know that there's such a level of shared mind that can happen with 5 people, that you can be extremely efficient. You can, I get a real kick out of like being in the south of Europe and just watching through the streets, watching little clusters of 4 or 5 people make their way down the streets. And if you start to look at them as a single organism instead of as these individuals, like the old granddad, the dog, the 2 young grandkids, like you just watch that unit go down the street, and you realize that the level of harmony between them is locked in the same way as if you were watching an octopus, you know, walk across the seafloor or something like that. You can do that with 4 or 5 people. You can't do that with 15. So if you're organizing with 4 or 5 people, you really don't need a lot of formalized structure, because you can just sink into each other's state of mind and become a collective organism. But with 15 people, you can't do that. You need some kind of formal structures. You need decision-making mechanisms. You need facilitators. You need post-it notes. You need, you know, rules and regulations. And the larger the group, the more of that sort of what I call prosthetics you need, the more supports we need for us to be able to access our role in the superorganism. So that's the one piece that seems to me fundamental to how do we become equipped to be community creatures, is that we develop the scale sensitivity, and that we understand, like, wow, most of the time, if I'm going to be living this life of a sense of belonging and meaning and purpose and all those good things, I'm going to spend most of my time in a cluster of 4, 5, 6 people. Probably that's probably how it's going to go. And so I should really build up my skills for how do I participate really well at that scale. And if I'm trying to do something ambitious and change the world and I'm by myself, first job, find your crew. Like your mission is irrelevant until you find a crew. And I say that because the process of becoming a community creature will change you, and your idea about what should be the priority or what we should focus on will change through the process of you finding your crew. And through the process of you gradually accumulating the skills, the ways of being, gradually working at larger scales and with larger resources, you're going to change. This is why I show up with a great deal of ambivalence and even sometimes antagonism towards the whole Web3 world, is that it's often composed of people that are trying to operate at the very large scale, transform economics, transform governance, transform societies at large, without having gone through the transformation personally of becoming an effective, sustained member of a group of 50 or a group of 150. And if you don't know how to be a villager at that scale, you don't even know what questions to ask at the scale of millions. That's me being a crotchety old man. I'm excited about being disproven, and we need naivety. Like I don't want to talk down on naivety. It's the essence of innovation. But so there's the scale side, right? Like it's really crucial that we get what the small groups are for. So the other half, so that's one theoretical piece. The second theoretical piece that I want to throw into the room before it's probably time to get into interactive mode with each other is about rhythm. And so this is how I interpret probe, sense, respond, is that it's a rhythm. It's a cycle. It's got this tempo to it. It's musical. It's like how many 4 billion years ago when the first heartbeat started beating in that little jellyfish somewhere in the soupy primordial ocean. And that jellyfish heartbeat went ka-dung, 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 ka-dung. And all the way from those billions of years ago until today, there's been this continuous sequence of heartbeats that were necessary for your heart to be beating now. Like that blows my mind. And that is the central operating principle of how I think about a human organism that's actually adaptable, that's actually humane, that's actually evolving, is that it's got to have the right rhythms. I know this sounds abstract, but bear with me here. So one of the reasons that, like, I started by saying a lot of these like communes and like ambitious community projects fail is because they're trying to do something too high stakes, and the ability to iterate it's impossible. Like you spend all this time bringing together your group of 10 or 20 people, and then you spend all the time finding the land that you're going to move on to, and then you all invest all of your life savings and you move in there, and it's extremely expensive to try again. Like it's kind of like an all or nothing, you know, it's a Hail Mary pass. And so like, instead, what I would recommend is like start small and iterate and iterate and iterate, and gradually, like I say, accumulate the skills, the resources, the ways of being to do higher and higher stakes collaboration. And iteration for me doesn't happen in some random chaotic process. It happens rhythmically, it happens dependably. So if you want to be in an organization that is adapting to its context, that can change, that can be fluid, that can evolve depending on different contexts and different challenges and unpredictable factors that come our way, as they seem to just keep coming our way. You can, if you lock in a rhythm, and it takes a while to find the right rhythm, but if you can lock in a rhythm where you say like, okay, every week we have this meeting and we have pizza on Friday, and we talk about what are we celebrating this week and what was irritating and what are we going to do differently next week. Like maybe that's the thing that you need in your community. If you can just establish that one pulse where you know there's going to be a moment to release tension, to hear about what's not working so well, and to just prototype and rapidly come up with new things that we can do. So like, hey, that really didn't work. That was irritating. That was a waste of time. That was a waste of money, whatever. This doesn't work. What are we going to do differently next week? If that can be a dependable rhythm, and I'm assuming you're doing all of the work to like build really good trusting relationships, open communication, taking care of each other. If that sort of fundamental substrate is in place, then you can't help but evolve towards the group that you need to be. Like that's how I understand the probe, sense, respond thing, is that it kicks off a process of evolution that iterates your structure to be fit for the people in the place that you're in. If you don't have that rhythm, then probably there's two tracks that I usually see groups go on. One is there's basically no innovation, there's no change, everything just gets stuck and grinds to a halt. And that's a problem with a lot of institutions that we're confronted with at the moment. And the other option is we have change, but it's only provoked by crisis. So things are the same, things are the same, things are the same until someone really blows up with how pissed off they are. And then we're like, oh, well, okay, we have to change. And then you're all stressed out because you're in this crisis moment and you come up with a policy which is like absurdly conservative or like really risk averse. And then things don't change again until someone else gets pissed off. And then you have this other like random sort of chaos moment. There's also groups that are just changing every single day. That's the other mode, which is just constant disorientation. And only the people who have the most commitment, only the like 2 or 3 people in the center of that project know what's going on, and everyone else is basically going, what how do I even fit in here? So sitting in this dependable rhythm, this thing that you can think your heartbeat to, like if that's the only structure that you have, is that you know that every Friday afternoon we have pizza, we talk about what's working well, what's not working well, what are we going to do differently next week. Like if you can get that piece down, people can relax. They know, okay, when things are not working, I talk about it on Friday. We come up with some constructive suggestions. If someone wants to bring their proposal for like, I've got this radical idea about how we could do everything differently. It's like, yeah, let's try it for a week. And I say a week, it could be a different rhythm in your context. It could be a month, whatever. But like, if we know that there's going to be this rhythm of experimentation and review, then people are willing to just try stuff and see what works. And you don't have to have these like long-winded theoretical debates to like come to some consensus about stuff. You can just go on together. So that feels like more than enough of me talking at you. I do love talking at you. I really appreciate the attention you give me. It fills my soul with joy, but I really don't think we're making the best use of all of the brains in the room, brains and hearts and all the other bodies and body parts and more than human people that are also in the room. Jeremy's got a move. He's going to pull it up.
Word, we're gonna play a game, nerds. Michal, your intensity levels is there. It's always there. We're gonna play a game. It's called Discovery Action Dialogue. So what I'm really curious about through this inquiry that Rich has sort of brought us on is like to cross-pollinate. Who do we know in each of our scenes that is really kick-ass actually at doing this type of stuff? That is the cross collaboration or finding a crew or setting the cadence. And so there's 7 questions. If I can get the fucking iPad up here, then I can share the screen and whatnot, that we're going to sort of go through in relatively smallish groups of like 3 or 4. Who's on the sticks for posting in breakout rooms and stuff?
And he's on the breakout rooms.
Yeah. I'll get the breakout rooms. You have a list of questions or something?
Yeah, I've got a laundry list of questions. If you Google Discovery Action Dialogue, that's probably the easiest route, rather than try and do screen share nonsense. There are 7 questions that you'll find for Discovery Action Dialogue. And those are, how do I know? Yeah, that's the one. How do I know that the problem is present. And let's just say shitty vibes collaboration. That can be lack of rhythm, lack of scale, whatever, too much YOLOing. And what do I do to then solve that problem? And then the third question is, what prevents me from doing that all the time? And then I think the fourth question is something to the tune of like, who do I know that actually just is mind-blowing and crushes that shit all of the time, never seems to be stopped the way that I am stopped, and what do they do? Of course, what do they do? So what I would propose is that we split into groups of like 4, and that we just go through those questions. You can go through the questions in order, out of order, it doesn't really matter, but have somebody that sort of like quarterbacks the conversation. Make sure you hit all of the questions, because we've got, 25 minutes should be more than sufficient. 20 minutes should probably be sufficient in groups of 4. And if you can, and it might be tricky in a group of 4, try and take notes, because the information that you'll be gathering is actually super high valuable. As a matter of fact, does somebody want to be a fucking hero and spin up a shared doc that we can work in? Sweet. Live players, I love them.
All right. So I gather there will be, let's see, we have four breakout rooms. And can everyone get those questions as the chat is going to disappear? You can also just click on the link. And I can also like send them to your breakout rooms.
When you get to the breakout room, if you open the chat, you'll find that it's still there.
Okay. All right.
And I've just dropped a link for a Google Doc, so I'll put them in there as well.
Perfect. And we have about, how long should we be in the breakout rooms?
20 minutes.
20 minutes.
20 minutes. Sounds good. Sayonara.
Boom, shakalaka laka. That was Discovery Action Dialogue. That's how that one goes. Part of me wants to keep her, but this is your party. Let me shut up.
Oh, you're more than welcome to not shut up. I really appreciated your contribution. That made a big impact on me. We are formally coming to the end of time, but I've got a secret. There is no end of time.
Can I just make a request for the document to be open? It wasn't open, so the other groups I couldn't contribute. But I think but I think everyone took some notes on the site, so we can still update the document.
It's open now. I'm so sorry. I warned you. It was after my bedtime, so I missed that crucial step. Yeah, please do add. I was going to say, we're technically at the end of time, but the thing that was going to be happening after this is not happening. So we are able to be a little bit sloppy and enjoy each other's company for a little bit longer. If you have to drop off, thank you for joining us. But if you don't have to drop off, I would love to get a sample of what happened in those groups. And now that the Google Doc is open, you can actually put your text in there. But probably more interesting than the text is, what was your experience like? Like, you listened to me talk for 25 minutes, and then you went into a subgroup and went through some of these powerful questions for 20 minutes. Tell me about what were those 2 experiences like for you?
I'll go. So I think I've heard you speak a few times. Each time is lovely. I think this time around, like, I felt like some sense of, or I felt like the sort of body joy of like, oh yeah, I feel like I'm starting small. I feel like I'm doing some of the things that Richard is suggesting. That feels really good. And in the breakout session, like, I got to hang with Alan and Mikhail, and like, I had like good body sensations there too. Those are good folks. So we had some good conversation from the prompting, and all was good times.
That's great to hear. Thanks, Victor.
I can jump in, and I do have to run pretty soon here, but gosh, when you were speaking, Richard, it was like everything was hitting my heart in the good and the bad ways. I was like, oh yeah, I know that one. Like, oh god damn it, the community is just so hard. So it's actually really nice to kind of feel the empathy. I also share your sentiment on the kind of broader Web3 space and how we need to really engage in it. And so, yeah, I really appreciated this talk, and then I really appreciated going into kind of these questions, because yeah, they're present questions in every community on the ground. Absolutely. You know, the way that it was worded was hilarious. It was bad vibes, sucky collaboration, because that is kind of the one of the linchpins of whether or not you're going to make it as a community. And it's something that, you know, it starts off as a very felt sense. You know, most people come into a community, that a lot of people come to our community and they're like, wow, everything's so amazing here, and you guys are all so happy, and it must be perfect. And we're like, you have no idea. It is not like that. Like, I get why you see shiny sparkles, but it's not like that. And that's not to say that we're not doing well and we're not happy, but there are always these problems, like almost like a romantic relationship. It's like, you can't be in a good romantic relationship and have it be healthy if you're not acknowledging the problems. So, you know, feeling into what those problems are and actually how you sense them, like that first question of how you know it's present, is actually a really good one. I really appreciated that. And then of course, how do you contribute effectively? I feel like we're always kind of brainstorming these questions, but the third question I think was the most important, which is what prevents us from doing these all the time. You know, like what are actually the things getting in the way of the rhythm, like you said, of actually iterating. And yeah, that was a really powerful box to open for myself, and I think for the group. And yeah, there's some big challenges there, and a lot of the ones I mentioned, like, I don't have answers for, and so and I'm okay with that. You know, I'm willing to be humbled that I just don't know a lot of what I'm trying to uncover, and I'm remaining curious. But yeah, I really appreciated that. And I mean, yeah, I could go into them, but I think I'll leave the space for everyone else. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Jasper. Any other sharings from the breakout rooms?
Yeah, I really found the phrase that this framing of scale sensitivity really useful, and I think it something that I see that we do here in the community that we have, and these kind of broader community spheres that are going out through there. But that could, you know, if you're just kind of navigating through an intuition or instinct within it, then it's really helpful to have some clear frame so that you have a shared language about it. And then when we went into the breakout rooms, it was just like, it was very clear that was part of the analysis, I guess, of how do we address what's going on. And it's about, hey, let's have one-on-one time, let's have a group time, what makes that safe, and that it was just very clear this kind of nested hold-ons of conversation are such a key way of seeing it, and being sensitive to those things just allows you to kind of cut down into the heart of what actually is going to work to address what's coming up. So yeah, that was a great little phrase I'm going to take away. Thanks, Rich.
Glad to hear it. I can share my experience as a participant when I got to take my hat off as being center of attention. Yeah, I came into this session knowing I'm underprepared and not going to be at my full resourcing because it's late at night for me. And it felt really good to know that Jeremy would probably, we don't know each other, we've had some interactions on Twitter, but I had the sense you're the kind of person that would like to contribute what you've got. Like, these liberating structures for me are just so amazing, and to have someone that's at the top of their game on that, and knowing that you could just throw that in Like the vibe shift for me from swapping from, I'm going to tell you what I think. I love talking. I think I'm smart. I like talking. I say things that are smart. People like me. I fit in here. Like, that's nice. But the vibe shift to then drop into a subgroup and hear, like Lily's contribution, she had a bunch of cool things to say, but one that really like kind of rang the church bell for me was, who's the role model for this, like, that knows how to bring the spirit into a group? Jesus. And telling us about how Jesus embodies this, like this archetype of Jesus, like embodies exactly the stuff that we're talking about. Like that was I never would have thought of that. Like I never would have come to that conclusion. And there was lots of other of these suggestions coming from the group. And it was like, oh yeah, everyone knows. Everyone knows. I don't have to be the one that knows. I don't have to be the smart one. It's not all on me to be like, oh yeah, I'm so intelligent. Look at them. Like we all got it. So that was really relaxing and relieving. And yeah, I'm super grateful.
Thank you. Definitely. I think that's one of my favorite parts about Rebuild. We do have a great lineup, but it's not about that. And we are insisting, hey, please, like whoever is the speaker, just like be in the role of the participant, because we're learning from each other. We have a moment to shine, but then we're just going to shine brighter together. So on that note, any other questions, remarks coming into the group, or else we're gonna let Richard go to sleep, and we all also going to go have some rest.
Could I ask, just before we finish, how do we find out more about Microsolidarity, practices that you guys are using, tools for engaging with stuff?
Yeah, so here's the website. Someone's just shared it. I need to share it as well. So go to the website. It's got text in it, which is useful, but really the stuff's embodied and you've got to practice it. So it's not announced yet, but I think the first week of June or first 2 weeks of June, we'll do an online program where you can do more of these practices. But you can subscribe to the newsletter so you'll be notified. And then at the middle of July, we're going to have Microsolidarity summer camp in Europe and one in northwest of the USA. So there's a chance to like spend a week with collaborators. Vancouver's not too far, right? Like you could drop in. So that's like a self-organized, the community is self-organizing these summer camps. And so they're both going to be really, really fun. But yeah, subscribe there. There's a digital community you can drop into. We have spaces every month where we practice online. So yeah, you're welcome. You are now official practitioners of Microsolidarity now that you've been through that experience.
Amazing. Everyone can unmute themselves so we can wave each other.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks, Jeremy.
Later.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jeremy. Thanks, Annie.
Thank you.